Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to spend a few words on the new Yinyu KB Ear F1. As you can see from here, what's unique about this guy is he is a one balanced armature only earphone. This company KB Ear, kind of a newcomer. This I think is it's either the second or third model in their line. There was a lower, more budget, I think it was a dynamic driver earphone. This is a one balanced armature. Then they have a more expensive one, I think with multiple. I can't remember if it was 4 or 5. But this is the single balanced armature only F1. So packaging, nice color packaging. If we pop it open, user guide, and kind of a nice foam packaging, tips, cable. So the other unique thing about these guys is they are basically all acrylic. This is the transparent version. There's actually a darker brown version, but they are kind of stunning to look at, really nice to feel. It's almost, they're kind of acrylic resin, so they almost feel like a pair of dice, and they kind of clack like dice too. But yeah, they're quite special looking. I'm not sure they look all that. They look great in my hand. When they're kind of sitting in your ear like this, it looks kind of strange, but they are absolutely stunning to look at, and you can kind of see the logo in there, but barely hard to see. So we actually have 2 MMCX connectors. We could maybe pop one of these guys off, or not. I'm not going to do that. You can almost see it. So it doesn't look like they're labeled, but this actually has a little L, and you could probably not make that out. But I read some other reviews that said they're not actually labeled, but they are. You just can't read it, and you can see they are there. And if it was any darker in this room, you would definitely not see it. But you can kind of see the BA units right there. So not too many pair of completely transparent resin like this, so kind of stunning to look at, and kind of shocking when you first pull them out of the box. Like, whoa, that is a unique pair of earphones. So the cable itself, it's sort of a clear plastic over some silver plated 2-strand. So nice. This is kind of feels like an aluminum, maybe it's definitely aluminum, gold plated connector. And I think the Y is kind of a similar piece right there. So comfort wise, not all my favorite. I sort of got really used to this IEM style where it kind of fits flush against your ear, and then you wrap the cable around and the whole thing kind of feels secure. These are kind of more like, get some really big tips so it jams into your ear so it stays tight. And again, kind of like the Ash, these guys really have to fit inside your ear really solidly because there's no dynamic driver. So all the bass is coming from the BA unit, and it's kind of different than that guy, but same issue. You really need to get some tips that fit your ears so these things can kind of stick in. And between all the brass in there and the connectors, it doesn't tug on your ear. I never really had them fall out because it's kind of secure in with the tip, but I'm always reaching for it like it feels like it's falling out, and I keep on pushing on them to make sure they're inserted in all the way. So not the most comfortable pair that I've ever used, but I also don't use this sort of earbud style all that much anymore either. So that's kind of it on the comfort side. What else can we talk about with these guys? So, sound wise, um, they're they're BA only, which was kind of shocking to begin with. Like, first question is, well, does it have any bass at all? That was my first concern. And second was, well, if it's reproducing the full range of music, is that going to sound weird? And if you do some quick searches on the internet for BA only devices, people say, well, the bass is kind of artificial sounding. And so I had a bunch of preconceived notions and assumptions of what these things were going to sound like. So it took me a while to kind of get into past all these preconceived notions of everything that was missing, and then to really fully appreciate everything these things do. They're quite amazing. So the first thing you notice about the sound is that the frequency response is like nearly flat. And I don't have my chart, but it's basically a flat line from sub bass all the way across until you get into the trebles, and there's a little peak there, but very flat. These are no V-shaped, fun, mid recess. That doesn't exist here. These things are sort of designed for, as the music was mastered, that's kind of what they were going for. And again, that's maybe not my cup of tea. I do like the V-shaped fun curve. I'm that guy who they built that curve for, because it emphasizes the bass, which I like, and then you get some sparkling great highs. That is fun to me, and so I'm the guy who they target with that. These guys, this flat frequency range, I don't know if that is specifically a target, but there's certainly plenty of people who appreciate that in headphones, because they would rather hear the music as it was mastered. So that's what you get here. And kind of interesting if you're not used to it. Like, I'm not used to it. You're like, well, it's all flat, is it going to sound dull? So it does the first time. Like, if you switch between the Ash, which are definitely V's, and these guys, you're like, well, it seems like I'm missing half my music. It's very flat. But that's just because those guys sound the way they do, and these guys have a different frequency response. So don't do that. I did that, and you kind of have to put them down and get your ears kind of back in calibration again. So not a good idea to A/B against something that is not flat. But once you sort of wrap your head around only what is coming out of this and not tainted by other earphones, it actually does sound pretty amazing. So the first obvious question is, so what does the bass sound like? And totally blown away. So maybe we'll start here, but maybe not. So music-wise, so on the sub bass, so something like Lords, Royals, or even Hurricanes. I don't know where the bass comes from, but there's plenty of sub bass there. It's actually kind of wild when you think about what's happening, inside this one BA unit and the sound that comes out of it. I'd almost say that if I was blind testing him, I probably couldn't pick out that this was a BA unit only on those specific two songs, because they sound extremely close to anything else. So sub bass, plenty going on. And in general, when we talk about the mid bass, it's really fast. And do you see that in the sub bass? Yeah, a little bit. It's not as bad. Dido's Hurricanes, and Lord, when the sub bass is rumbling, it rumbles not as long as the Ash, but it's definitely there. Where you notice sort of the quickness of the mid bass is, that's where you really notice the mid bass. It's super fast, super tight. It's not really bleeding anywhere, which is, I almost kind of like it when that punch kind of bleeds up a little bit. That doesn't bother me at all. I kind of like it. Some people don't like it, obviously, but these guys are almost too fast in that area for me. That's just kind of my personal preference, but it works out in some music types. Just the way that, you know, the fast hires of the Ash did its thing for certain types of music. For certain types of music, you know, it doesn't matter whether it's fast or slow, but kind of if you're looking at my playlist here, you'll see the sweet spot is kind of above the mid bass, right into the midsection. These are all vocal heavy songs, and this thing kind of shines. That's the sweet spot. Not to say it doesn't go low, it definitely goes low, but when you try to mix the two, that's where it kind of goes a bit wonky. And so like what I don't have on here are some rap. So these are amazingly kind of detailed at vocals. So some rap music is sort of right in that zone, you know, Drake or Jay-Z or even Eminem, where they have that quick, clear, kind of staccato delivery. These guys shine. Where they don't shine so much is how fast the mid bass is, and we're used to hearing sort of that driving boom of the bass and the punch. That's a little thin on these guys. So does rap sound okay? Yeah, to some people it's going to sound okay. For me, personally, I need a little bit kind of more in the mid bass, or at least slow it down a little bit so you kind of hear it and appreciate it more than how fast these guys, how kind of fast and accurate and tight these guys are on the mid bass. But the midsection is kind of where these things are at. And like I said, Dieter's Hurricanes, that's sort of a mix of, it goes kind of in the mids to uppers. And as it does that, you really notice how detailed these things can get. And that's sort of the one preconceived notion where you're like, well, it's a 1 BA unit, it should do vocals and upper treble really well. But still, you're like, it's still one unit and still reproducing the full range. Does it, you know, run out of sort of budget, right? Can it really do all the way low to all the way high? And I would say it can do all the way low to all the way high. Are the highs super rich? Probably not as much as a hybrid unit, but what the word that kind of stuck in my head, I was listening to all these songs, is the details. Listen to Hurricanes, listen to all the nuances of her voice, and as it trails off and some of the things in the background that are super soft, they come through really, really well on these guys, kind of better than most other earphones that I've been listening to lately. So on the midsection, all vocal heavy, so Promise. And so the other thing to notice is that these are, if you listen to these on a V-shaped normal pair of earphones, they sound about right, because the vocals have been bumped up a little bit, so they're very vocal forward. So, you know, Sam Smith and Peter Gabriel, not as much. Lady Gaga and Cornflake Girl, all these songs are sort of mastered in a way so the voices are more forward. And this is sort of the complement to what these guys were, kind of the opposite. And I always kept on thinking about it while I'm going through the F1. I was like, well, these are almost the opposite songs that I chose on the Ash for that reason, because the vocals sound much different on the Ash as they do on F1, because this is flat as opposed to being recessed at all. So everything that was sort of mastered for that fun sound actually sounds really good on the F1. Really, really good. And some songs on here, so Promises sounds pretty good on a lot of different earphones. But so Peter Gabriel's Red Rain, another one of those songs where you can hardly tell that this is a BA only unit with his particular voice. I mean, it sounds like dead on Peter Gabriel. There's no artificialness with the drums or any of the weird sounds that you imagine would happen. Peter Gabriel sounds exactly like Peter Gabriel. Super accurate. It sounds super good. And I like listening to Peter Gabriel a lot, but he doesn't really, even that song doesn't really show up on my top list every time I do one of these reviews. And the same goes for Above and Beyond on a Good Day, the acoustic version. One of my favorite songs to listen to, but very rarely do I find a pair where it sounds super good. And that kind of goes back to the detail on these guys. Just kind of amazing for acoustic music. So this one, I love the song, but it rarely ever popped up on the list. But with these, I thought it felt like, it's so good that you should really listen to that type of music on these F1s. And then you get kind of Lady Gaga, Joanne and Shallow, which were the ones that I would not recommend on the Ash, but here's the pair that you should listen to those two. And her voice is just perfect for these F1s. And another thing that kind of kept throwing me off was the piano. I kept on thinking, well, am I hearing more of the strike than the resonance? And both her songs, she's playing the piano, and I would listen to it and I'd be like, I think I'm missing a lot of the lower end of the piano. And then I would put them down and then come back later and you listen to it again and you're like, no, it's all there. You're just not used to hearing it sort of on this flat frequency range. So again, give these guys some time for your ears to kind of warm up for them, and it's all there. Your mind might be thinking, well, it's not, but trust me, go back and listen to it twice, and you'll kind of figure out that, yeah, these things are doing some amazing sound reproduction. Tori Amos' Cornflake Girl, another one of my favorite songs, almost never shows up on, one of my favorite songs for any particular earphone, but her vocals are really forward, and maybe it's the rework version, maybe it's just the FLAC version I'm using, but absolutely amazing on these guys. And Lana Del Rey, she always sounds pretty good, but sort of her low voice suits these well, the same way it does with Peter Gabriel. Where your preconceived notion is, well, these don't do lows really well, they do. Peter Gabriel, Lana Del Rey, with that kind of low vocal, great. And the highs, the treble, like I said, I would describe it as more detailed than maybe accurate or rich. It certainly sounds great. I wouldn't say it's the best cymbal crash I've ever heard, but for me, the accuracy sort of at the lower end of the treble kind of makes up for what you would maybe miss at the high end. I don't listen to all that much, strings that go all the way up that high, so I don't necessarily focus on the especially the high treble all that much, but on the lower end side and the details, I love it. I love the F1. Then I will say that the complement to this list are some vocals that don't sound well because they're mastered with the vocals a bit recessed. And Macy Gray kind of popped out as one. Spanish Harlem, which sounds amazing on pretty much every V-shaped earphone I've ever tried, almost sounds recessed on the F1. And I think it's just because it's flat. And if you're just not used to hearing it on a flat response, then it sounds a bit flat or maybe recessed a little bit. But it didn't blow me away, which it usually does on pretty much any earphone. And I will say that I didn't EQ anything. These were all straight MQA, bit perfect, using USB Audio Player Pro. So could I fix Spanish Harlem? Yeah, almost certainly, because it was like a tiny bump in the midsection just to bring it up a tiny bit. But all the transparency and all the detail there, it just didn't remind me of other earphones that I listened to that same song on. So that's kind of a wrap on these guys, and it kind of still kind of blow me away every time I pick them up and try them. What can one BA actually do across a wide range of music? And You know, probably not my rap, R&B, reggae, anything that sounds a little better with a slower bass, you know, I probably wouldn't use for the F1. But anything, you know, that is fine, faster, or sound better faster, with a mid bass like that, yeah, that's kind of where the F1 sweet spot is. And you can kind of see from my list, these are all vocal heavy vocalists, we'll call them that. And that's kind of the sweet spot, and that's where I think the F1 really shines, and it's kind of special. So give it a try. These are about $36 on the Yinu Audio Store at Amazon. So I'd like to thank those guys for sending this to me, and if you'd like to buy your own, I'll include a link in the bottom, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.